Well, Dave, should we get the show on the road?
Sure, looks like we're 3 o'clock here.
All right, so I'll call the meeting of the Strathcona Gardens Commission to order, and we have confirmation of a quorum. Adoption of the public agenda, please.
Move adoption.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That is carried. And then moving on to, do we have any petitions or delegations?
I
don't think so.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, and adoption of the previous minutes of September 8th.
Move adoption. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Any business arising from the minutes? Any, Councillor Kerr, you're flashing? No? Okay. Any public considerations? So moving on to the chair's report. I just have a suggestion for staff and the commission, and that would be that the current agreement with the Storm Hockey Club and the Strathcona Gardens Commission is expiring in 2022, I believe, at the end of the season. And taking into consideration the operations of the Storm organization and the seasonal nature of the club, I would propose that the Strathcona Gardens Commission give direction to staff to begin discussions on the renewal or extension of the contract in the first quarter of 2022, with the objective to have an agreement approved prior to the end of the 2021-2022 season, and that the proposed draft contract extension be for a 3-year period. And just put that out there for staff or commission. Some thoughts, discussion, comments.
Is that a motion?
Okay.
Commissioner Lee.
Through the chair to our corporate officer, my understanding was that because this is a private business using a public facility, that each year that they have their lease extended needs to be notified publicly in the newspapers for any public objection to anything beyond 1 year. So I don't know if we can do a 3-year extension legally through the chair to a corporate officer.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's one of the things, if this direction passes, then staff would bring back a report to look at those issues in terms of timing, because it will, of course, have to go through the board as well. So I think basically in terms, I understand the intent and the desire to have this completed prior to the end of the current season. There will be numerous steps involved, and so I'm not sure that I can answer Commissioner Lee's question right now today, but certainly that would be part of any staff report coming back.
All right, I'll wait for the staff report, but I don't really agree with contracting out a public facility to a private business for any great length of time, just because the public might have other things they want to use the facility for at some point, and you don't want the public who's paying the taxes for this place to be shut out.
I certainly appreciate those comments, Director Lee, but Mr. Leach, the current contract is a 3-year contract, is it not?
Yeah, it's a multi-year contract, so certainly we'll outline those details in the staff report, but yes, you can obviously enter multi-year agreements for use of the facility.
Commissioner Evans.
Thank you, Worship. And yeah, I think this is a great direction to take, and certainly appreciate the intent of having it done before the earlier in the year. But my question really to staff was more around the staff report that would come back. Is that anticipated that would happen? If we're looking to negotiate a contract early in the year, would that be something that would happen before the end of the year, or what's kind of the timing when you think? I'm just not sure. I'm not sure of how difficult it would be to bring a staff report back.
Yeah, and if
oh.
I may, Mr. Leach, the intent of this is just to facilitate a discussion for staff to be able to look at it and put it in their time frame as to whether January, February, March are a reasonable time to work through the details and have those discussions, and then and that gives lots of time for staff and also the commission to have that wholesome discussion.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
I think
clarifying that.
Yeah, and how I'd envision it is that the resolution goes through, it's passed by the board at the end of the month. And then we'd bring a report back to the commission, kind of outlining some of the things we'd like your direction on, like term and, percent increase you're looking at, to give us some parameters to start negotiating with. So we would bring probably a report back to the commission in January on those terms. You'd give us some direction. Then as Commissioner Adams says, we'd start negotiating in, February, March, based on those terms.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee?
So what would be the start date of the next contract?
I believe 2023.
Well,
Okay.
actually, Mr. Chairman, I believe the current contract expires, I believe it's end of March or mid-April of 2022, so
Yeah.
somewhere in that range.
And Mr. Yates, I think you're correct, and that's the reason for me bringing it forward, because I just don't want us to be behind the eight ball, having to try to negotiate a contract that is either nearing expiring or already expired, and then they're going to go into the off season, and there's that uncertainty going into the 2022-2023 season. So is that sufficient direction, or do you need a motion?
Yeah.
Or?
Did you have what you that motion written out there? Were you reading off something, or?
I was reading off my notes. It wasn't really a motion. It was just, but I can.
What we can do, if the commission understands that we record these, so we can pull that motion off as a recording, as long as the commission members are comfortable with your intent there. We can certainly get exactly what you said off the recording.
Yeah, and it's appreciate that it's more just discussion. So if staff are looking to bring a report back in January, then that's fine.
Yeah, that's good. No, happy with it. I would forward it as a motion there and get commission's endorsement.
Okay. So to do that, then Commissioner Lee would have to take over the chair and me make the motion. Is that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I can do that. Okay, I'm in the chair. Director Adams, Commissioner Adams.
Thank you. That staff be directed to bring back a staff report for a renewal or extension for the Storm Hockey Organization contract in January of 2022, with the objective to have the agreement approved prior to the end of the 2021-2022 season, and that the proposed draft contract extension be for a 3-year period.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Everyone understands the proposal. I'm going to be calling the question if no one has any discussion on it. Discussion at all? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Pardon me, anyone opposed? That carries. And I'll hand the chair back to Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee, and thank you to staff and commission members for your indulgence. Moving on to staff reports, the Strathcona Gardens Public Health updates for receipt.
Move receipt of the report from the Chief Administrative Officer.
Second.
Discussion or over to staff?
Just basically from our perspective, I mean, I think we're all inundated with public health orders and news and updates on COVID, and so we didn't want to, bore anyone to death with too much of the public health order updates, other than to kind of give the commission an update on the facility itself and how they pertain to attendance and masks and COVID IDs and those kind of things. So I think the important part of the report was that we're back to full attendance, if you will, at the gardens, and we just wanted to make that clear to the commission.
Okay, thank you. So here, let me just. Oh. So anyone opposed to receipt? That is carried. And moving on to the 2021 preliminary surplus report for Strathcona Gardens.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Staff, anything further?
Yeah, I just want to give a kind of high level. This is in line with the budget calendar that we provided to the board and updates we said we would bring forward at this meeting. So at this meeting, we had a couple things because Wolf's got a pretty good detailed report on some options with Recreate moving forward. We didn't add any business cases because we're still in the mode of Recreate and facility upgrades and expansion. And so we're still holding the line on anything that we can and not bringing business cases forward. But what we wanted to do was just give you a high level kind of status of the health of the gardens in terms of surpluses. Surpluses will give you an indication of, if you're bleeding through it, you're probably spending a little more than normal, and if you're gaining surpluses, you're probably doing better than that. So COVID was an interesting year, obviously, especially for recreation, in that we were all trying to rein things in. We weren't doing a lot of hiring. In fact, we were laying off at the gardens. We weren't running a lot of programs. Yes, we weren't receiving a lot of revenue, but we weren't putting the money out as well. So Mike's put together some kind of a health and status of the gardens and using the surplus as a bit of a benchmark. And what I want you to understand, and Mike will speak a little more to it, is when we look at the COVID year, we generated a surplus, obviously, a great deal more than we typically would because of the shutdown and layoffs and reduced programs. And then we give you a benchmark of what an average surplus year would be. And so when we're looking at the gardens, an average surplus maintained is about 565, and we're about 520. That tells us we're in a decent spot there in terms of our spending. And so having said that, I'll just pass it over to Mike, and he can kind of complete a little high level health of the gardens in anticipation of looking at what we're thinking of in terms of Recreate and in a draft budget moving forward, what we might be looking at.
Okay, anything further from staff? Or from
thanks, Gabe. I just really briefly, I think Dave actually covered most of it, but yeah, this report kind of focuses on the surplus. It's not so much the dollar amount of the surplus, but it's the change from year over year. So obviously last year with COVID, some of the projects backed up and whatnot. We tried to switch the focus to the maintenance and everything else. So we were fortunate enough to get the COVID money, so that kind of helped to keep the surpluses above the x-axis, so to speak. But and then, yeah, generally looking forward, we're capital is a big concern, so we're going to try and fit Recreate, and then as well as Recreate, bolster the other part of the capital plan, just because there's as everyone knows, there's a lot of work to do up there. So the better we can get it a plan going forward, the sooner the better on that. So thanks, that's what I have.
Thank you. Seeing nothing further, anyone opposed to receipt of the preliminary surplus report? That is carried. Moving on to item 3, the Recreate project status update and project options.
Move receipt.
Second.
And to the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before engage Wolf here, I kind of just want to give a status of, where we are with Recreate and the budget and what we've been kind of working towards is that, so as we all know, we weren't successful in getting a grant for our latest phase of Recreate. And so we're kind of in a spot now about what do we do moving forward. We're looking for direction from the commission of saying, okay, we'll come up with some options as you've seen in the report. And before we do too much on budget and look at the things we can maybe hold off on or things we need to move forward, kind of get the commission's take on, what they'd like us to do. So we'll come up with some options for the commission, and he's happy to run through this and then and answer any questions. Wolf?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Dave. Through the CAO and the chair to the commission, this is a report with regards to the Recreate project that speaks about the status of the project after we got approved to move the design of the schematic, the concept design into the detailed design. It also provides an update to the schedule and the projected budget forecast. And some of the contracts that we have issued that are required to actually move the detailed design forward. So that is the first part of the report, and I will continue to the options that Dave mentioned it before that will help us to determine the best way to actually continue moving the Recreate project forward. So the first part about speaks about the design work. So again, just a little bit of a refresher to everyone here. Back in March 2021, we hired HCMA architects to start developing the detailed design, the 3 stages: schematic design, design development, and construction drawings. We also hire Make Projects to help us developing the RFPs to select the prime consultant, the sub-consultant teams, the construction manager, provide a detailed schedule, as well overseeing the budget that we're incurring with the detailed design. We require to hire as well a surveyor. This is it is needed for the detailed design. We hire a hazmat consultant to do testing in the facility. This will help us to determine where all the hazardous materials are located in the building and how much would actually cost us to remove it once we start the construction. We hire an environmental consultant to study some of the soil conditions and some of the existing conditions, as well other agencies that do testing to the facility. So all these owners consultants are required to move this forward. And one of the most important ones as well is the quantity surveyor, who is doing costing to the 3 different stages. In terms of the schedule update, initially the detailed design was scheduled to be completed in March 2022. We came across an issue where the schematic report that we provided the quantity surveyor was costed, and we came out with a budget that was $11.5 million over budget. So we have to stop and look at all the different reasons why the total project cost came that high, and we had to do an exercise of, everybody probably seen it before, called value engineering. So that took us a couple of months, almost 3 months actually, to have that developed, and we have moved now the schema. Now that everything is being rectified, when we bring in the budget back to what was approved back in 2020, we have moved the schematic design now into design development. So the completion of this design is scheduled to be finalized in May 2022. The last item that I have is about the budget forecast. So again, I mentioned that we obtained a budget of 59.9 million. So when back in 2020, we introduced a budget of 2020. So we can see that there is a huge variance of $11.9 million. The main drivers for this significant cost increase is related to the market volatility. It's also related to the hyperinflation in construction material costs, the lack of skilled labor force, and the increase in building areas. So we look at all these things, and value engineering process, we reduce a lot of the areas that were considered in the concept design, and we were able to align that with the project budget that was included in 2020, with the help of the construction manager, who is actually getting quotes directly from the builders, which is very helpful. This is the update that we have with regards where we are sitting. The plan is to have the prime consultant, the architect, the lead architect, Paul Fast, to provide an update that will show all the different areas that are being designed and the layout and all the different features that this project has. Coming to our office in January 2022. So I think that would be a good way for everybody to understand more what's being designed. Now we have, I'm moving into the, any questions about this first part of the report, the update?
Commission members, any questions for Wolfgang?
So if we were successful in getting a grant on our third attempt, is it still like around the 73% funding level on this, or how much of a grant could we get?
Thank you, Director Lee. Let me just please explain what the options are before I can respond to your question. So
Okay.
it's based, we're still waiting for, there is an opportunity to apply for a grant to the green and inclusive community buildings. This program kind of got frozen before the elections, and they haven't announced the second intake. We're currently waiting for that second intake to be announced before we put an application. So we're also waiting to see, I will confirm the requirements to see what's the percentage that they're funding and if there is a percentage that we have to cover on that. So please just give me an opportunity to look into that, and I will get back to you on that. Okay. Before I continue with the alternative options to advance the designs, are there any other questions?
Have we looked at, because $11.9 million over our budget is not something that we can just make materialize. It's not easy. So is there any way we can look at the project again? And I have a little bit of experience with this because of the Campbell River Library situation, where we actually looked at the first design and then tried to make it fit into our budget by maybe cutting some corners here and there to make it fit. It still didn't fit, and the project costs are going up 5 to 10% per year, and it just felt like the right thing to do to put the project on hold until the market stabilizes, the labor market, the materials market. But I'm just wondering, like the pool design that we have for Recreate, we're not gaining a lot of space in, like, we're not gaining a lot of swimming space. So could we not look at maybe reworking the pool plan so that we put the liner in the pool so the pool doesn't leak anymore, and just go with what we've got there, and then build the health?
Maybe I can help out here. So what we're looking at when we had the original estimate of, it was $46 million, and that was for the pool and the common area. That's what we were moving forward on our design, and our application we submitted, it aligned with the program, and it was about $10 million for the common area. So then COVID hits, and as Wolf said, the cost escalated to about $59 million. So Wolf sat down with the cost surveyor and the value engineering team and looked at those things and said, look, that's not acceptable. And what we've brought that down to is a number that we're confident with now is 49.8. So it's interesting when we look at the library, and they had $15 million, and they said, oh, COVID, now it's come back at 21. What I think Wolf's trying to say to you is our original number was 46 million. And through our cost evaluation, surveying, and COVID, it's looking like 49.8. So it's not significantly higher after we've gone through all that evaluation of what the design is, the changes to the labor market and cost of materials and so on and so forth. We're basically saying that the good news is we've gone from what we had at 46 to 49.8.
So 3.5 million more than our
Three
base
point-
budget.
That we
3
had
point-
back, 3.8, yeah. So
Okay.
it went up 59. We did the value engineering, looked at cost control, updated real costs out there in the market, and we're 49.8. So we're still hovering around. What we're pleased to say is our capital cost for that build is still hovering around our original number there.
And Mr. Leach, just to confirm that that is including the built-in contingency costs?
Yeah, the cost escalation, yeah.
Right. And as Director Lee has, or Commissioner Lee has stated, with the library project, there is a hope, and there's no guarantee that the markets will stabilize with the COVID recovery and may come back down. Not very likely, but we can hope.
But we're not out of left field now with our number and what COVID's happened. We're still hovering around a very similar number. So
Okay.
that's good news.
Anything further from the commission?
So potentially, can I just summarize what I'm understanding I'm hearing is that if we were successful in getting a 73% grant on 50 million, we would get 36.5 million. And you're saying the project cost is 49.8.
Yeah.
Yeah, so around 50, close to, round
so
off.
So here's what we're proposing. Here we have three options for you, if I can help simplify this.
It's only-
One is keep on our current track right now. We have another program out there. In fact, we're eligible to apply for a larger grant than we did for the current program. The current program had a limited amount of money. We talked to the province. We tried to align with similar awards, not going too big, and put something in for $10 million. The federal program has larger parameters of awards there. So what we're saying is we keep moving forward with our design. We've committed our money there. We've spent most of it anyways, and apply for this program. We stand a better chance of getting a larger amount than we would have provincially. So then when we go to the second option, we say, hey, look, and we're just trying to provide options to the commission. We can we've looked at the cost of the pool like for like and said, look, we know we've got a leaking pool. We've got some issues with the settlement in the ground that we could do like for $15 million. But that would leave a whole bunch of other things outstanding in there. But we have enough money where we have enough money in the bank and borrowing capacity that would make zero change to the requisition. The significant downside to that, of course, is the facility would be closed for 2 years. And then the third option, just because we thought you might be interested, and said, hey, look, we haven't got any money in grants, and if we look, we're confident with the 49.8 number because Wolf has done extensive work getting a high level of confidence with that number. If we took the money in the bank that we have, the money that we contribute for debt servicing right now into reserve, we'd need an additional $35 a home, and that would cover the $49.8 million project. So I just wanted to give you some perspective on, without a grant, and what we've done up to this point and the money we've put into reserves, and I'm not saying it's nothing, but it's $35 additional to a home today. We would borrow that money over a 30-year term, and that would get us the $50 million. So what I think the perspective is important there is that if we go back to option one and look for a grant, if we get anything with the work that we've done to date, the number for this upgrade is going to be quite small. $35 a home is the worst case scenario.
Well,
And
that's the
so-
average home, right? I mean, there's homes
Yeah.
in Area D worth over $1 million now. They're going to be paying a lot more.
And there's homes that are being less. All we can do is come up with the average home. That's to give us some perspective. So, but again, why I think that perspective is important is that you know, I personally hope that we move towards option one. There's grant opportunities out there, and we might get a lot, we might get a little, we might not get anything, but we're still in the ballpark of being able to do some kind of upgrade to the facility that's not insanely expensive.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, these estimates are based on starting projects within what sort of a time frame? Like within a year, or within 6 months, or within 2 years? What's the time frame that the estimates are based on?
I would say a year, because as Wolf said, he'll be done the detailed design, you know, basically tender ready by May. So what you see here is looking at starting within a year.
My concern, and that's even with option one or option three?
Yeah, option three is again, they're just options for you to discuss. Is that, you know, we would up the requisition, we would have the money available, and we would start, we would do tendering in the late spring, early summer, with, you know, construction to begin sometime next year.
My concern is, you know, I mean, I know there's an optimistic thought that prices are going to go down, but I don't see that. In fact, you know, if we get hit with another surprise, whatever that could be, you know, some of these numbers could even accelerate more, and there's more pressure on the building community. So I don't see, I mean, if we want to keep our money in the bank, then obviously option two is the way to go, and that's the most conservative approach to it. But you know, I think the longer that we set the construction start ahead, and to me, option one, it's not in our hands. It's total. I mean, we could wait a year and for that grant to come up and get turned down again, and then we're into year number, you know, it's not in our hands. Option three is the only one that is in our hands. So to me, it's between option two and option three, whether we're going to be conservative and just like for like and be good enough for the next while until we look at this project through new eyes, or number three, option three, let's just get on with it, swallow the costs and move ahead for the community.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. In regards to the comments regarding option one, I think Mr. Leach has identified that the federal grant is out there. I have continued discussions with our MLA and provincial Minister Osborne on the importance and how far along we are in the design process. I think it's worth putting in for the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings program for the second intake. And while we're doing that, simultaneously proceeding with the detailed design, and at which time when we get into financial planning, that will be having that discussion as to whether we can proceed with option three. To me, option two is, we've been doing this for too long, and that's how the facility is in the condition that it's in. And it's a patchwork, piecemeal, not functional, and to me would be a huge mistake. But that's just my personal take. Commissioner Evans.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the staff report. And when I was reviewing the options, I think I had similar comments to what Chair Adams had with regards to option two. I just don't see that as being a solution for us. It feels like a huge step backwards. You know, I know, I realize that this has taken us a long time to move this project forward, but I don't think we should lose sight of the fact of why we're doing that, and that's to meet the community need. And option 2 to me just does not meet the community need. I see no reason why we shouldn't continue applying for a grant. I think I almost feel it's our responsibility to seek out any grant opportunities that are out there. That's just being responsible with taxpayer dollars to leverage those as far as we can. So my question to staff was going to be, why do we have to only go with one option? Is there a reason that I'm not aware of why we couldn't continue to move forward with option 1 while still pursuing, still moving forward with option 3? My question is there a reason why we couldn't do that? And if I can just speak to the comment around the timing of option 1 grant, was there any indication when it was put on hold of what was the timing from when you applied for it to when you would be awarded? Was that a fairly lengthy process the last time that this grant was available?
Well, if I can just address the first comment about the options. So option 1 option 1 is the option you're kind of thinking of. What that basically says is continue on design, make application for a grant fund, and if successful, build option 3. Option 3 is let's just go build the thing, because what happens with grants is if you start building something, you're ineligible for grants. So one is continue design, make application, and hold tight, and option 3 is go for it.
Right. Thank you. I do know that, but thanks for being reminded. We just can't be getting anything if we're applying.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
and I think Wolf can speak to the last phase of how quickly the intake and the award period was.
Yes,
Thank you.
Wolfgang, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Dave. So the program doesn't say how long it takes for an application to get approved. However, I'm getting information from consultants in the Lower Mainland. Applicants that apply for the first intake early this year are already being contacted by the program, and they're moving this process forward. So I'm fully aware of 2 projects in the Lower Mainland, one in Coquitlam, and I believe there's another one in the interior in Kelowna. The federal government is communicating with them to actually move this process. So, and I'm also have news that it is anticipated that within the next 4 to 6 weeks, they're going to open the second intake. So my feeling is that I just want to be proactive. I want to be ready to have an application ready to submit it. But Dave is correct on option number 3. Once we start construction, we're not allowed to put an application. By then, the application will be already there. If we move with option 1. And the goal is that, yes, the intake is open in 6 weeks. We will have an application submitted early next year. And I anticipate that within the probably 6 months, they're probably going to be sending emails approving or disapproving projects. I think this is not like the ICIP program where we applied before, the 2 previous applications where it took over a year for us to get an answer.
Right. Yeah, my concern. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee?
Yes, from the commencement of this project, when it was just an idea, it was stated by everyone, and everyone agreed that this was dependent on getting grants. We weren't going to go to the taxpayers for the full meal deal. We were going to pay for this through grants. Otherwise, Area D wouldn't be involved in it at all. So we need to go for the grants, what grant money but we need to be realistic about how much grant money is going to be available, because last intake we were competing all over the island for 100, and I think it was 120 million available for the whole island. And, Nanaimo wanted 87 of it for their downtown recreation thing. And, we need to like focus on what we really need. And what we really need is that health and wellness center. It's a revenue generator for us. It helps all the retirees with their, joint pains and their aging problems. And, I think we need to be realistic and not say, oh, let's just tear down the whole place and rebuild it, the entryway, the admin offices, all that stuff. I think our facility honestly looks pretty good on the entryway and the front end. And I think we need a wellness center and maybe a liner on the pool. I think that's what we should be going for to begin with, because I don't think we're going to get any more money than that. Honestly.
Wolfgang?
There's the ideal thing, there's the idealist, and then there's the practical person who knows that, there's only so much money going to be available, and we can't just squeeze it out of the taxpayers because, forestry is shutting down and jobs are going to be lost, people are going to be hurting, and we can't just go, oh, well, it's only, average of $35 a home or whatever. That's $35 people won't have. So we really need to be more realistic. I don't agree with like tearing down the whole facility and rebuilding it at this point. I think we need to be realistic.
Okay, we have Wolfgang and then Mr. Leach.
Yes, thank you so much. Directly, I'm listening to your request, and I just wanted to share with you that this program, the GICB, the requirements are very stringent. In order for us to qualify, we need to meet requirements to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We need to actually meet accessibility requirements. We also need to focus on energy reductions as well. So all these programs are changing and they're making it more difficult in a way that if we want to only focus on one small area of the project, we probably won't meet that criteria and won't be able to apply for. So the only way for us to actually go for an application here is for the new aquatic center, for the entire new aquatic center where we meet all the requirements, we tick all the boxes, and there is a higher chance for us to get a grant. This is very different, the ICIP, and I understand where you're coming from. Thank you.
So
Mr.
what's
Leach?
the total available?
Mr. Leach?
Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think Wolf said it well, but just to be clear here, a liner on the pool is not an option. We have subsurface issues, so a liner never was and isn't an option. And as Wolf said, the wellness is included in the current design. And there's things that we have here that will bring our application to the top in terms of energy efficiency, environmental issues, providing wellness and options. So I think we have an excellent design here. We have whittled out all that stuff. We've narrowed it down here. We're focusing on these programs. These programs are complicated. They're not just here's some money for the pool. They want zero emissions. They want energy efficiencies. They want a whole lot of things that in order to get the money you have to do. And I think our design aligns perfectly with that. And it suits the needs of the community too, because we are addressing the wellness and we're not tearing down the whole building. The arena portion stays.
And just before we go back to Commissioner Lee, I agree with the statement that the health and wellness is an integral key piece of the entire facility, but it is not independent of the pool upgrades that are going to complement that health and wellness program and ability and function. So to do one without the other, you're not meeting all of the originally intended services and needs that we were putting forward. Commissioner Lee.
So I would agree with going for option one to try to get the grants. But if we don't get those grants, then, this is going to come down to a referendum probably. And I don't think people have an appetite for spending, millions of dollars on a non-essential service, so.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lee. Am I taking that as a motion for option one?
Yes.
I
Second,
see Commissioner Evans' lips moving, but was that a second?
it is a second.
Discussion? Anything further? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you, and thank you to Wolfgang for all the work that you're doing on this and trying to position us in the best possible way. I know that Mr. Leach and myself will continue to bang on doors and make phone calls and try to position us in the best possible light that we can finally be rewarded for all the great work that we're doing. So thank you. Correspondence?
I'll
Item
move
K.
I'll move that the November 3rd, 2021 correspondence from the Campbell River Storm Hockey Club regarding internet services be received.
Second.
And discussion?
Subsequent,
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, I think this request came in this morning and I forwarded on to put on the agenda for information. I'm just wondering if staff have had an opportunity to have any thoughts on it, or do we just want to receive at this point and then the subsequent for staff to look into it?
I think a subsequent would be good because I have looked into it. I've got some thoughts on it. It's not cost neutral for us, but happy to bring something back to the commission a little more detailed.
Okay.
thank you, Your Worship. that
Commissioner
was gonna-
Evans?
Sorry, Chair, that was going to be just a request for staff to come back with further information.
Okay, so any further discussion on receipt? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Commissioner Evans?
Thank you. And a motion that this be referred to staff for a report back to the commission with any additional information.
Second.
Discussion?
I would like to just propose that we have a little extra in that, saying that, and further that if extra costs are going to occur, that they be included in the proposed contract with the storm.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, that's direction to staff. Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you. So we'll have a motion to move into the closed session.
Move to receive the CAO's report on closed session.
Second.
And anyone opposed? That is carried. So I believe Edith had just sent out, so we need to.
I move to go in camera under the sections of the community charter noted 91C, K, N, and O.
Second,
Any discussion? That's carried. And I believe we have to sign out and then sign back in.
Motion to terminate, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We'll do
So
a
moved.
motion.
termination.
Thank
Second.
you. Anyone opposed? We are terminated. We'll see you in a minute. Thanks.